Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Bobby. You know, when it comes to short game club selection, there's a lot of latitude to be granted, meaning there's a lot of room for you to do it your own way. And never would I look at someone who's already an A or an A+ when it comes to short shots around the green and tell them that they need to do it a different way. Even if their method is completely apart from the way I do it, that's perfectly fine. But if someone is a B+ or less and there's room for improvement, then I recommend that person experiment with different shots. Now, never was this point driven home more clearly than when I was playing with this fellow by the name of Richard Clark. This was about 30 years ago. And Richard was kind of a local legend there around Asheville, North Carolina. He won everything. And he had 5 or 6 course records, but he was somewhat diminutive in stature, I guess you could say. He was, you know, he could hit this driver about 235 yards. This is in his heydays, 35, 38 when I met him. His 5-iron to go about 160 yards. And so on short courses, he was deadly. And those courses where he had set the course record, he, you know, was 64, 6,500 yard courses. But I always thought, man, if this guy could hit it 290 yards, he would beat everybody. He'd be a household name. And in fact, one time he was playing in a shamble. And if you don't know what a shamble is, that's a 4-man event in which all 4 players tee off. You then select the best drive of the 4, and all 4 players play in the rest of the hole on their own ball from that spot. So you have the advantage of a good tee shot on every hole, pretty much. Well, Richard shot 59, and that pretty much drove the point home that if he could hit the ball farther and better, then he would be unbeatable. But one of the first times I was playing with him, and again, I was watching everything he did because he was known as such a great short game player. He was in front of a 460-yard par 4 in front of the green. In 2 shots, he'd gotten close. The wind was in our face. He simply couldn't get there. So he had about 100 feet to the back flag, and he was right in front. And I saw he was about to play. I was doing something else. I looked the other way. But about the time I heard the ball being struck, I turn around and I look, and the ball is rolling on the green, just like that one is there. And it rolled up, nestled really close to the hole. And as it did, I said, "Hey, man, great putt." But as I said, great putt, I looked at him. He was reaching down to grab his putter. He hadn't used his putter. He had an iron in his hand. I go, "What was that?" He held it up. He said, "It was a 5-iron. I said, "A 5-iron? You used a 5-iron? I said, "Well, then doubly so. Really great shot." He says, "That's not a great shot. That would have been a great shot with a sand wedge. With a 5-iron, it was simple." And we got to talking about it a little bit, and this is what he had to say about that. With a 5-iron, because the swing is so small, it's not going to give you hardly any, much backspin at all. So you don't have to factor in how much it's going to check. And what he was saying, that when he hits a sand wedge up close to the hole, and he was pretty good with the sand wedge too, that he really doesn't know until he sees it land and see how much it checks to know for sure if he hit a good shot or not. However, as he was saying, the moment he looks down to watch this ball after he hits it with a 5-iron, he knows right away whether or not he hit a great shot. And so that is what, in his mind, made this a much better selection. If early on in the shot you know you hit a good, come on, go in the hole. You came up short. Then that would be an easier shot. The club that you know early on, soon after you hit it, that it's good or not, is the one that is the smarter club selection. Now, later on in that round, we were playing, and he was in front of a green again. And the flag was all the way in the back. And this time he hit a sand wedge, and he spun it up there, and again, it ended up close. And I said, "Man, that was a sand wedge, right?" He said, "Yeah, it was a sand wedge." I said, "Why didn't you use a 5-iron?" He says, "I could have. I had plenty of room to run the ball. But this time the thing would have, if it had gotten on the ground, it would have broken 15 or 20 feet to get back to that hole. That's now too much to factor in." And so there are times when just because I'm in front of the green doesn't mean I'm going to use a 5-iron. Just because I have a long chip doesn't mean I'm going to use a 7-iron or an 8-iron or anything else. But rather, I'm going to look at the situation and to decide for myself what the best course of play is. And so my message to all of you is all of us are faced with the same challenge, and that is that as soon as we walk up and we have to play a short shot, the first thing we must do is apply an imaginary solution to the problem at hand. What's the problem? How am I going to get this close? Apply an imaginary solution. What would a sand wedge do? What would be the pitfalls of that? How about a 9-iron? Hey, you know what? A 9-iron seems good. No, that's going to come up short. How about an 8-iron? 8-iron. Yes, that's the one. That's kind of how the club selection goes. And if you're stuck always on just simply, using one club, not that you know why you do, but that you always have, and you've never doubted it because on day one, that's the way you started doing it. If you're anything other than an expert, then you're probably need to change the way you do things. All right, and so that's what I have to say to you. I'm not saying you simply must use a longer club to hit your long chip shots, but I will say this: let your preferences be a matter of experimentation and nothing more. And by the way, if you haven't, look down here and click on my mugshot to subscribe. And if you'd like to check out the membership site, this golf ball logo right in the box is where you should click. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next week.